organizations give themselves a pat on the back to having women. Okay, that's a step. But what about women of color? Okay. What about women of color over a certain age? Because again, you get to 50 and it's like, oh, she's past it. She's had it. Well, actually, no, this is the peak. This is the best. For me, this is the power trifecta. Black female over 50, power trifecta. This is the best time. You're getting me at my best.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. Welcome to October. It's so hard to believe that we are already in October. I don't know about you, but this year has flown by so fast for me. I hope you're enjoying your fall and looking upon the next few months and year ahead with excitement and all the possibilities for yourself. I wrote about this in my weekly newsletter, but I was reminded recently that sometimes even our best laid out plans may not work out for one reason or another. Has that happened to you? You think everything's in place just right, and then boom, something happens which just jolts you and stops all the momentum from moving forward. I was fortunate to spend a few weeks in Portugal recently, and it truly is such a beautiful country, rich in history and with incredible scenery by the ocean and quaint cities and towns with the most fresh seafood you can imagine. As I marveled over the views in Madeira Island, it reminded me of how little we really have control over. Nature shows us this every single time. But one thing we can control is our thoughts. So I was shaken when I suddenly received a health scare from my mother while on vacation. Thankfully, though, she is on the mend. But at the time, when I heard the news, my thoughts spiraled out of control. What will happen if? I was then reminded of a quote that helps me so often, and it may help you, from a wonderful, inspirational, and spiritual leader by the name of Muji. And it goes like this. Everything is in place for life to unfold in its natural way. Be aware of this. So instead of focusing on the negative, I asked myself, why did this happen? What is the positive lesson in this situation? The answer was that it is time now to slow down a bit, spend more time with my family in these precious moments, and as a quote about so aptly says, everything will work out just fine. So I'd like to ask you now, what is stopping you in your tracks right now? Is there something preventing you from following through on your best laid out plans? And if so, what is it? If life gives you a jolt like it did for me, focus on your why. Once you know your why, and once you know who you really are and what you really want, the rest will follow. I promise that. If you really need help finding your why, reach out to me and let's have a talk. Sometimes our best laid out plans throw us a curveball, but I'm here to help you navigate the path forward. So I will be taking some time to spend with my mom and dad in the next few weeks. And for this reason, our group coaching program, which was slated to start on October 17th, will be postponed. However, I'm completely here for you and present for you for my one-on-one transformational coaching program called It's My Time Now. If you are at a crossroads in your life, if you know you want more or are confused, fearful, or even excited about the next steps, but just don't know how to get started, I can help you guide you through these transitions in your life. It's no obligation. Just reach out to me for a chat, and I can give you a glimpse into what is possible for you. This week's podcast episode with Janice Sutherland is sure to inspire you. I love her confidence, her no-nonsense attitude towards life, and the fact that regardless of your age, color, background, or experiences, you can do this. Enjoy the episode, and I'll join you at the end with the key takeaways. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, which is a global community of women in midlife. I am also a professional women's empowerment and life transitions coach, and my bold mission is to empower 1 million women in midlife worldwide, like you, to find your inner power and purpose, and to say with confidence, it's my time now. As part of this mission, I interview incredible women for this podcast who share their stories of reinvention and will give you their advice on how to overcome the obstacles in your way to reach your vision for yourself in your next stage of life. This week is absolutely no exception, and that I'm honored to have on the show today, Janice Sutherland. Janice supports women to dream big while achieving their goals and career ambitions. As a founder of This Woman Can, an award-winning leadership and personal development company rooted in career mentoring for executive women, Janice now helps countless career-minded women to realign their careers while staying true to their values and personal and professional priorities. Her professional career has spanned over 25 years of leadership with prestigious multinationals in the UK and Caribbean. She crossed continents to create a new life and make history when she became the first female CEO in the Telecoms Sector in her ancestral home of Antigua and Barbuda, whilst in her 50s, only to step down at the height of her corporate career to create a life on her own terms. Janice knows only too well the hurdles and obstacles women over 40 face in pursuit of their goals. Watching women worry about being on a path that they are not passionate about really cemented for Janice how important using her experience is in terms of helping them to find a career that is in alignment with their purpose so that they become more deliberate with the outcomes in their life, leading to more flexibility, choice, and freedom. So that's fantastic, Janice. Such an interesting story, and I can't wait to get into more details and all the amazing work that you're doing. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kavita. Great to be here.
Wonderful. So I just read your incredible bio, Janice, and it seems that, your career has kind of placed you in multiple leadership roles across the globe, multinational companies, and now you're the founder of This Woman Can, as I mentioned. So can you kind of describe to our audience what your reinvention story is and what kind of led you to where you are? I know it might take a while, but maybe some highlights.
I'll try and
highlights of
make it short.
Highlights of where you are. How do you got to where you are now?
I think I've had many reinventions. I got married very young. I was 19 when I first got married. And by my mid-20s, I had 2 children and I was single and divorced. So a little bit of societal cliche. So I think a lot of my personal career didn't really start from then because I'd left school without many qualifications. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I've got to keep a roof over my children's heads, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a few things like the system. I could work the system, as I say, that it was more beneficial for me to work part-time financially than it was to work full-time at the time when I took into account of childminding fees and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I decided at that point, well, I can't sit here and stagnate. I need to do something different. What can I do? So I found the opportunity to go to university. I'd never gone to university before. Didn't think I could do it. When I was growing up, I'm a child of the 60s, so when I was growing up, and especially in Britain, your future was pretty much carved out. Black girls didn't really go to university that time. You left school, you got a job, which is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the first in my family to actually go to university at probably about 26, 27. Went back as a mature student, studied full-time, worked part-time, raised the kids all at the same time, and never want to do things by halves. And so then I think that, not to open the door, but going to university solidified what I was doing was right when I came to being leadership or working, because I now had the theories behind what I was doing naturally. I'm the eldest of 6. So I think leadership, I've always had that leadership role kind of thrust on me, whether I wanted to or not. Eldest of everything, first generation immigrant, all that kind of stuff. So I was always a first. So fast forward, after that, met my now husband just before I turned 40. And he told me pretty much that, appreciate, lovely meeting you, really like you, but I don't intend on staying in the UK. I was like, wow. He had a family home in Jamaica. He wanted to move to Jamaica. And I was like, our relationship was going really well. Kissed a few frogs along the way. It was nice to find a prince. So I'm thinking, oh, this one's a bit of a keeper. I need to consider, let's look at what's going on. My children were also, I had mature children. I had my children young. So my children at that point were pretty much grown. Mm-hmm. So we decided, I said, yeah, I like Jamaica, but come and look at Antigua. So we had a couple of trips here. We'd brought our mom back. That's when my mom had been born and all that kind of stuff. He liked it. So we bought a piece of land and built a house. And the plan was that we had a plan, 5 years, we would move out, we'd leave the UK and come to Antigua. I actually got a job. I was applying for jobs. I knew I couldn't just up and leave. I wasn't retirement age. I still needed to work. And as a citizen, I had citizenship. I was able to work. So I found a job with the telecoms company. And I said to my husband, well, this job doesn't come along very often for this level of organization. It's a great opportunity. My youngest hadn't quite gone to university yet. He had a bit of a setback, so it took him a little longer to get to university. Yes. But he was due to go. And I said, look, I'm going to leave you with my precious cargo, my 2 children. The youngest gets to university. I will fly off to Antigua because we already had the house. We'd already built the house for a couple of years. And I will start work. And that's what I did. And a few months later, he came out. So I like to say we left home. So in Antigua, working. Finding I eventually became the CEO, as you said in my bio, the first female CEO, but then realizing I'm actually working harder now than I did when I was in the UK. And that wasn't the plan. The plan was to take it back a bit. I knew I had to work, but I needed to step it back a bit. Now I'm in my 50s. And I'm like, whoa, is this what it's going to be? I can't. And it was the organization I worked in was very pressurized, very high paced. People think of the Caribbean as being very laid back. Not in this industry. Wow, not in this. Okay. It's very, very competitive. You were on the go all the time. You want to be the market leader. I actually managed 2 countries at the time as well. So it was Antigua, Barbuda plus Montserrat. So I had dual territories. So I found myself working incredibly hard and thinking, this wasn't what this isn't
what you signed up for. Yeah.
I don't see the beach. I'd watch my husband skip out. He was smiling every morning, going, how the heck is he smiling every morning? What is he so happy about? Because it wasn't unusual for me to, at the drop of a hat, to say, come home for lunch maybe, and say, look, I've got to go to Miami. There's a meeting. So I'd have to fly out somewhere. So, and it took me a long time. I was worried. I was the main breadwinner. And I'm thinking, I don't want to work for anybody else. I'm not going to find a job on the island. It's a small island, less than 100,000 people. I've already got a prestigious position because it's very prestigious. People knew me on the street, from TV, radio. Your life wasn't your own. You're a little celebrity in a small pod.
Yes.
And I was like, what am I going to do? I didn't know what I was going to do. But all the time I was miserable. I knew this is what I didn't want to do, but wasn't very clear on what I wanted to do. So I realized, and in the meantime, I also think I was menopausal, not realizing it, because I was highly stressed. Emotions were happening. I was very, very, very horrible at home. How I managed to maintain my marriage. I took everything out of my husband because he was a safe space. So the frustrations and what I was feeling. And I eventually said, look, this is not going to work. So I had to have a conversation. I thought the first person I need to have a conversation with is my husband. It's one I've been avoiding, but he knew something was wrong, but I just wasn't being open.
Right.
And he just said to me, goes, well, Janice, you've been doing it for 7 years. You've supported for 7 years. You've never stayed that long at any organization anyway, because I've always moved organizations. He goes, maybe it's time for you to do what you want to do.
Smart man.
And it was like, well, I think he was just relieved. It wasn't him I was mad at.
Yeah.
So he said, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you need to do. So I thought, wow, that was almost like, I suppose, I wanted to give myself permission, but I didn't want to let him down either. You know, I was worried about knowing somebody was on my side. And it wasn't that I'd worked the conversation to such a level where I was so petrified of what the outcome would be that I was avoiding the conversation.
Yes.
And once that happened, I'm like, whoa, okay, then that's good. So I then made the point, we were going through a huge transformation at work. And so I knew didn't want to leave the organization in the lurch. That's still my legacy as far as I'm concerned. So I knew how long this process was going to take. And I told my boss, when in one day, I said, look, I'm going to give you 6 months. This is what I'm going to give you 6 months. But after 6 months, I will not be here at the end of the transformation. At the end of the restructuring, I'm not going to be here. I don't want to be part. This no longer what I want to be part of. But I'm not going to leave you in the lurch. So he was a bit shocked. What are you going to do? I said, I'm not quite sure yet. But I know this isn't
I'll figure it out. Yes.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. And things just kept aligning. All the reasons I kept telling myself why I couldn't leave, finances, all this kind of stuff. I was treated as if I was made redundant. So I got paid as if I was being made redundant. I'm like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So the finance side was whipped away, the worries. And little things, everything, all the obstacles that I was telling myself that I couldn't do it, why I couldn't leave, they were just being quietly swept away. So all the excuses were being taken away. So I left. I left in 2017, Christmas, just after Christmas 2017, almost 5 years. Wow, that has gone so quickly. And took a little sabbatical. I probably took a sabbatical, took a year out, traveled a little bit, wrote a book, started the podcast because I knew.
That doesn't sound like a sabbatical. I took a sabbatical. I wrote a book. I started a podcast. What do you do in your spare time?
I know. But it tapped into, I think one of the things I did was tap into the creativity side. I never thought of myself as a creative. And what I found was that I was a natural creative. I was writing because I had time, or I didn't have the restrictions I thought I'd put on myself. You know, I love doing the podcasting. That's now 5 years of podcasting, over 200 episodes, 250 last count. It's now a YouTube channel. And the coaching, I said, well, I was a bit unfair to myself. And I said, I didn't have a plan. I thought I'd go into coaching because I'd been coached and I'd naturally done coaching throughout my role. So I'd taken my coaching qualification while I was still employed. And I thought I'd go into coaching. I can do leadership coaching. I do women's leadership coaching. I know there's women leaders out here who need but the leadership really bored me.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I could do it, but it didn't excite me. It just didn't excite me. And what I found was happening, and the universe was giving me signs, was that women were coming to me and saying, Janice, how did you do that? How did you have the courage to leave without having something to go to? How did you have the courage to start all over again? Weren't you scared? You're in your 50s. Weren't you worried? And I'm like, well, actually, I didn't think of any of those. That wasn't the fear I had. I wasn't scared of going to do it once I decided I was going to do it. The issue was voicing that and saying, this is what I want to do. Because people had asked me if I was crazy. When the news came out that I was leaving corporate, I had the local newspaper recalling me to ask me if I'd been fired from the role. And I was saying, no, it's my decision. A woman can make that decision. Yes. No longer for her. This is not the path I wanted anymore. I can choose that. I have. It's my prerogative to do that. So I played with the leadership piece for about a year. But as I said, I found women were coming to me. And I'm like, well, I can do this. I actually know I have the experience, many transitions. I have the experience. I know what the fear's like. I know what that feeling in your tummy, that you're not sure about what you're sure what's going to happen. But I also know what it's like to stay somewhere that no longer aligns with who you are.
Yes.
And also to come out of that and think, okay, there's a few bruises along the way because it's not smooth sailing.
Yes.
But there is a way out. And I've never been happier. I'm 57. I have to remember how old I am. 57 years old. And I've never been happier. This period has has been the best period. Absolutely.
I can see that because you're just beaming and you have so much energy, and it's just like, it's palpable. So wow, there's so many things and thank you for sharing that. And it's just an incredible journey. And I think you and I have both had a podcast. You've interviewed a lot of people, right? And
yes.
I see such a commonality, and firstly, in a lot of the women's stories that I have interviewed. And one of the things you mentioned is that you were in your 50s and you were worried and you were at top of your game and you were in your career, but you were also menopausal, and there's your relationships and everything is happening all at once. And it's like this perfect storm of things. And then often we just don't know where to turn or what to do. But the fact that you actually faced that conversation that you were avoiding with your husband, firstly, and set it out there and decided to say, what is it that I really want? Yes. And that is the key. That is the key. And this is why I'm doing this. Yeah. And why you're probably doing what you're doing is for women to realize that, ask yourself that question. What is it that you really want? Yeah. And when you have that clarity, or even if it's not perfectly clear, but like you said, things start aligning. Things come into your world, and people come to you, and it just that you take that first step, and it becomes clearer and clearer as you go along, right?
And it really is about taking that first step.
Yes.
And the first step can be just I don't want this anymore.
Exactly.
It's just admitting to yourself.
That's a huge one. Yes.
Just admitting to yourself that this isn't what I want anymore. Because I think, again, of a generation, we're probably the similar generation, immigrant
I'm 56.
parents. Immigrant parents, where this was what we want you to do. This is what we want you. This is what you should be doing. This is the life. This is what society said you should have. The house, the car, the this, the that. And then realizing, I've got all that, but that was okay back then in my 20s and 30s. That's what I wanted. But now in my 40s, 50s, I actually want something different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't involve, it's not necessarily financial.
Yes.
So, but what is it?
It's internal fulfillment, I believe. And where do we get that? Where do we get that? And it can come. And I love the way that you said that you didn't realize you tapped into your creative self. And that's one of the things I do is like, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you haven't done since you were a child? Yes. Tap into that piece. So I just wanted to share that I can completely resonate with your story because it's similar to mine and similar to a lot of women who I think are listening. So Janice, you talk a little bit about, obviously when you made that big decision to leave your really great corporate career and you went into this new thing that you weren't really quite sure of, I'm sure there was a lot of hurdle. You talked a little bit about the hesitations and hurdles and obstacles. They're internal, but they're also the external people. Like, oh, well, are you crazy? Like, that's what happened to me. Yeah. You have such a great job. Everything is perfect. Why would you move? Why would you change? Right. Yeah. So what would you advise women who are listening, who may be in a similar kind of state where they're thinking of doing something different, but they're being stopped in their tracks from whether they're internal limiting beliefs or external obstacles? Yeah. I know that's a big question, but just maybe a couple of things that they can do.
I have what I call a MacGyver mentality. For those people who watch MacGyver, the old MacGyver, not the newfangled one.
Oh, is there a new one? I didn't even know there was a new one.
Okay, there was a new one. So I have what I call a MacGyver mentality, in the fact that there's always a solution. And the fact that it doesn't always look pretty, but you need to focus on what your end goal is, what the outcome you're looking for. So for me, there is always a solution. It may not always be the most direct one, because sometimes we think we can just go straight there. Well, actually, no. It may be that you have to take a couple of detours to actually get to your end goal. So don't be deterred by the fact that what you want right now doesn't always seem totally achievable. You can't reach out and say, yep, I'm going to touch it in 6 months' time. That's what I'm going to be. It may be that the first step is going to take you 6 months. So it's about having maybe a longer term game plan. And planning for me is crucial. I always say I did myself a disjustice that I didn't have a plan. I said I didn't have a plan, but actually I did. I did have a plan. I was going to coach. I just wasn't clear. The plan wasn't there wasn't like 50 steps clear in the plan, but I had some sort of plan. Then there's the things he said the external things that are telling you. So all internal stuff, the limiting beliefs and the little inner me girl that's telling you what you do. You crazy? What are you doing? What are you doing? It's just really putting them into check. And when someone says to you that you haven't got that qualification or you can't do that, who says I can't? And what do I actually value their opinion is the first thing for me. Do I actually value their opinion? Do they know what they're talking about? People have a lot of opinions based on very little. You find that. Yes. So for me, it's about sorting out fact from fiction and being steadfast. If this is what you want to do if this is what you want to do, be focused on it. You're always going to get your detractors. But similarly, you'll have people who support you on your side. So you want to have, though, you want to have people who aren't always going to say yes, but are going to be devil's advocate. For me, that's my husband. He's very good at doing that. He's very good at being a devil's advocate. And I have a couple of friends in my circle that I can go to and say, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. This is what's happening. And they'll go, well, how would you do this? And I suppose it's being coached, being coached yourself as a coach.
Yeah.
Asking the questions.
We all need a coach.
Yeah, exactly. The best coaches have a coach. So it's about being asked those questions that you've subconsciously been avoiding yourself. So I think that's where you would start. But there's always a solution. Just think of it as a longer term game plan.
Yeah, I love that because I'm the same. Because if you go along and you know this is being in leadership. If you write down your goal, your end game, or whatever the final thing is, or your true vision of what you want, or visualize it and write it down, and then work backwards and say, okay, well, how do I need? What do I need to do in order to get there?
Who do I need to talk
to? Because if you even the process of writing it down is so so empowering, right?
Yeah.
And then, you're right. It's like, you can listen to other people's opinions, but how does it align with what I value? And also having a tribe of people around you that support you and challenge you as well. So those are great points. Great points. So speaking of values and purpose, I know those are big things. Those are big. Purpose is can be a very daunting word to a lot of people. But when we're thinking about specifically, in your case, career transitions and in our later life, how do we figure out, how do we stay true to those values and purpose that we have? Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I think the first thing is to realize that values change. Your values definitely evolve, and as you change, mine does certainly have. I'm hoping they stay the same for the next few years. I think it makes me happy. So that they definitely do change. But I think it's when it comes to purpose, does it make me feel good? Is what I'm doing, does it make me feel good? Does it make me happy? It can be frustrating sometimes. But ultimately, does how I feel about what I'm doing feel better than the frustration? Does it align? It's hard to say, does it align my soul? It sounds very airy fairy. Does it align my soul? But I think there's a feeling you get that make that feel, it's very difficult to describe, that says, yeah, I'm good here. This feels right. Maybe painful a little bit at times, but actually ultimately it feels right. We've been in worse situations and we know the pain. We've been in situations that have been very painful in careers and jobs where it's just been very uncomfortable. But we know going down the line and looking at where we're going to and what we're feeling, what we want to do, it feels a lot more comfortable. I put on a nice jacket or a nice piece of clothing that feels very comfy. And I think when it's like staying true to it is also knowing that maybe you have to still evolve a little bit further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the values. It's an evolution, and we keep evolving, and it's natural to evolve. And I think it's been able to lean into that and say, okay, the air of curiosity, where's this taking me?
Yes.
Where's this going? What will happen
Yes.
if I do that? I always said I never want any coulda, woulda, shouldas.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to try something. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But at least I've tried.
Yes.
It's like when people don't like asking for something. And I always say to people, I say, well, just ask, because if the answer's no, then you're not in a worse situation when you started.
Yeah. What's the worst thing that could have happened? Or what's
Yeah,
the best
exactly.
thing that can happen? Right.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's so true. Firstly, the fact that you started off with the values. I mean, if you look at your values change. If you look at your values when you were younger versus where
Mm.
they are now, they change, and you need to adapt according to that. And I love the fact that you said, and I do this a lot, and I encourage my clients to do this too, is every step you take, even in the beginning of the day, or if you're making it, every decision that you have,
Mm.
ask yourself, how is that going to make me feel if I do this? And if it doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah.
If you can manage not to do it, don't do it.
You know,
It seems almost simple, but it's so like people don't
it's
do that enough.
no, and I think there's something very liberating. And I had this conversation with a couple of friends a few weeks back. Something
Yeah.
very liberating, being in my 50s and thinking, I really don't care. Do you know? There's
Yes.
that. I really
I
don't.
don't
You
give
know,
a
yeah, I got to.
yeah.
I think I'd got to the point in my career where
Yeah.
I'd attained more than I actually thought I was going. No, I attained more than I ever thought I would attain. I never thought I'd be CEO. I was just happy to have a good job, money to have a life I wanted. Never thought I'd be the CEO of this big corporate organization. So for me, I'm like, well, I've already exceeded what I'd already planned, what I'd planned, and I'm not
Yes.
on a career trajectory, so I really don't care. And and the attitude sometimes actually came out at work, because I'm like, I'm going to say what I've got to say, because, to be honest, this isn't the end of I don't want to go any further in my career. So if you fire me, that's your
Yeah.
choice. But I'm going to tell you how I feel about it. And it's something so liberating about
Yes.
thinking, no, I don't have to do that.
Yeah. But it can be even for anybody who, even if you're thinking about starting a business, or
Yeah.
even if you're wanting to leave a corporation, or and start something new, even volunteering, it's like, well, if you care too much about the judgment from other people,
Yes. Yeah.
then that's going to stop you.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So having that
Absolutely.
attitude of,
Yeah.
I don't care,
Yeah.
sometimes it's good. I mean, obviously you take, like you said, you take the good things from what people say,
Yeah.
but if you're going to worry about what are people going to think, or the judgment that's going to be involved, it's going to stop you. It's
Yeah.
going to stop you. So just
Yeah.
don't do it.
Absolutely. And I think, and I think we spend so much time. I don't know about anybody else, but when I was younger, I was very cognizant of being judged, which is probably why why I took certain actions, even getting married when I did and stuff like that. There were certain societal judgments that
Yeah.
I didn't want to fall into. So I did things that were based on what I thought other people would think about me. And maybe for a long, long time. And now I'm
Yes.
like, the only person's opinion that matters really right now is mine.
Yes, yes. And it's natural. It's natural, I think, when you're younger to have to live up to those, especially as women of color, like you and
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
We, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, you alluded to earlier, like for me, being Indian, there's certain traditions
Yes.
and kind of like a cycle of life that you have to follow. Like you
Yeah.
have to education and marriage and kids and all of that. And it's
Yeah.
fine. And I love my traditions, right? But sometimes if you go against them, or if you go away from them, then it's like
Mm.
there's that societal expectation of,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
why did you do that? Or if divorce in Indian culture, for example, isn't really looked upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's interesting. That kind of leads me to this next question that I had, because you focus specifically, most of your clients, or all of them, I believe, are women
Yeah.
of
Pretty
color.
much.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yes.
Yes.
Pretty much.
So maybe you can describe, I mean, I know because I'm a woman of color, but
Yes.
what does kind of unique obstacles or hurdles do women of color face, especially like, so there's, firstly, you're woman, you're minority, and then you're over 50. So
Yes.
there's three things.
Yeah.
So what are some unique things about us that we face?
I think the beauty for me when I work with my clients is our lived experiences. We know that there are certain things or certain situations we've been in, for the microaggressions, the biases, as we've come through our careers, that, dare I say, the Caucasian woman would not have experienced. And I know for me, certainly when I've explained my situation to some people, to Caucasian women, well, this, they play it down. I'm like, but that's my lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when I work with my clients, they feel comfortable enough to share things that probably traumatized them. I've dealt with a lot of women that have dealt with burnout or have been traumatized by former experiences that, unbeknownst to them, or maybe they do know, have actually shaped their decisions in their careers because they're scared of it happening again. So maybe they won't take particular risk in their career. Maybe they'll stay in a certain situation in their career because they're scared that if they leave here, that they'll be judged somewhere different. So it's those lived experiences that make a very big difference to I think to the conversations you can have, to the questions you can ask. And they know it's coming from a place of, I don't want to say sincerity, it's maybe sincerity is the word, but they're coming from a place that this person, if I answer that question, they're not going to think that I'm making this up.
Right.
They're not going to say that, oh no, that could never have happened. But it did. It's not going to be judged because, and if you took a certain action because of that lived experience, that maybe you think that later down the line, you feel maybe embarrassed about or ashamed about, because you're thinking, if I'd been somebody else, if I had the strength to stand up to this person at that time, I would have done something different. So you're living with all of that. And so to be able to sit to them and say, well, okay, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I can see. But, or, we never like to say but you know what I mean.
Yes. In addition.
In addition. How else could you have looked at it? Or what has that decision that you took then, how has that served you? How has that helped you? Because they're beating themselves up about this bad decision when actually it was protective.
Yes.
It was what they did quite right to protect themselves at that point in time. But what it shouldn't be doing is holding them back in fear because they think it's going to happen again. Let's work out the tools that will help you to stop falling back into that situation should it ever arise again. And I think that's the difference. We're in our 50s, we're women of color. We know the expectations. We already know what society sometimes thinks of us.
And what does society think of us?
Sometimes we walk into a room. Sometimes it's not always about age because people don't always black doesn't crack type of thing. So people are not always quite certain of your age. But there is a question about how did you get to where you are? How did you really do that? How were you helped, or did this happen? There's assumptions about your background. There's assumption about somebody maybe gave you were a part of a quota. Maybe part of a quota.
Or a break. You got a break. Or
you got a break, or somebody, I played the race card. Oh, don't play the race card. What race card? There is no race card. This was kicking and screaming and fighting to get to where I was.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I always remember being in the boardroom, and sometimes, maybe not the boardroom, but even before going up, and you probably did it, we always used to go the phrase I would use is spot the black man. So you've been in a room of all these white faces and you're looking for somebody in there that looks remotely like you, just a little bit of color in the room to feel. Just to not feel, just not to feel that you're alone in this room. You're alone in this room because it can be pretty daunting, and people don't realize that. And I certainly didn't realize how much that had impacted me till I moved to a country where I wasn't a minority. Having spent my life as a minority, there's a certain acceptances, you kind of live with it. But when I came to a country, they're like, wow, everybody looks like me. Everybody, literally everybody. And I've just done a trip to the UK quite recently. And that happened. And I'm realizing all those little microaggressions. I'm like, wow. Or not being served, people looking through you because they assume you shouldn't be there. Why are you in this space? You shouldn't be here. There's those assumptions.
Janice, is that changing? Is it changing at all?
No. I just came back from the UK, and that was my experience in the UK literally a few weeks ago. And I'd forgotten what that felt like. And I'm going, am I crazy? Am I like, no, this is really happening. This woman is, I'm standing there at this at stall to ask her about her product. I'd gone to a conference or an exhibition, and she's serving everybody. Am I invisible? She's serving everybody. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm like, but I'm the only black face. This is
Oh,
really, this is really happening.
it's
So
insane. It's crazy. It's crazy.
absolutely.
Yes. I mean, they say that it's improving, but I wanted to get your opinion because you're right, and you're right in this area where it's like you're trying to help women of color lead, and you're coaching them. And do you? I was just wondering from your experience, have you actually seen any improvements within organizations or in society? So
I think the improvement I've seen is that we're talking about it.
yeah,
That's the improvement. It wasn't a conversation on the table before. It wasn't a conversation on the
that's
table
true.
before.
Hmm.
So I think there's some follow through, but I'll be honest with you, I've never seen so many DEI or D whatever it is. That but diversity and inclusion just didn't exist when I was coming up.
Yes.
It just didn't. But
Yes.
now I've seen it everywhere, and I'm like,
Everywhere.
wow,
It's almost obligatory, right?
obligatory. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's I mean, certain organizations are really doing good work, but
Yeah.
it has to be about for the right reasons.
But I think the fact that you have to have positions in organizations tells you that there's been a problem.
Yes.
The fact you have to have somebody that has to address it, it's been a problem that hasn't been recognized, dealt with for such a long time. At one point, organizations give themselves a pat on the back to having women.
Hmm.
Okay, that's a step. But what about women of color?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about women of color over a certain age? Because again, you get to 50 and it's like, oh,
Mm.
she's past it. She's had her
Yeah.
time. Well, actually, no, this is the peak. This is the best. For me, this is the power trifecta. Black female over 50,
Yeah.
power trifecta. This is
Yeah.
the best time. You're getting me at my best.
Exactly. And that just leads me right into, because often I get so annoyed by that phrase midlife crisis, and it drives me crazy because it's like,
What
what
crisis?
crisis? Right? What are you talking about?
What crisis?
So I wanted to get your opinion on that, because as women in midlife, whether yes, color or not color,
Yeah,
I believe it's a huge opportunity. And what
absolutely.
is so unique about us women at this stage, 50 or higher,
Yeah.
older?
We have so much experience right
Yeah.
now at this time. If anybody's starting over, you're not starting again, you're starting from experience. There's
Hmm.
so much we know right now that we can tap into that we didn't have when we were in our 20s, when we were
Hmm.
taking those tentative steps in our careers. There's for me, definitely, I've had my children. I've had my
Hmm.
children. I know some people may have had children late, but again, you're not at the point where you're going to have to start your families because you've already had your families or started your families. So
Yeah.
there's almost that I don't have that biological clock issue
Hmm.
ticking, wondering if I'm going to do this. And I can have choices. I have choice now. I'm not in a situation where I feel I have to do a particular position because of. I'm doing something because I actually want to do it, and it
Hmm.
aligns with what's important to me. It aligns with where I want to be going. It allows me to do this is more about me now as opposed to the organization. I can view it as it's not about what I bring to the organization, it's what the organization can do for me.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I can have that attitude going to
Yes.
because I already know you're getting the best. That's a
Yes.
done deal. That's a
Yes.
done deal. But what can you do for me?
Yes. And it's the freedom of saying that, and it's the experience, and it's the confidence that, and I really believe that as women in this stage of life, we just need to just tap into that confidence, because it's so important, because you have it. It's inside of you. You just
Yeah,
have to bring it
yeah.
out.
I mean, it's funny you said empowerment because I have a love-hate relationship with the word empowerment. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
because I don't know about what it was like where you are, but where I am here, I'm in Antigua, we had lots of empowerment lunches. And I used to see these women, and they were very well attended. And I'd see women turn up, and it was almost like they'll wait for this empowerment bolt of lightning to come down after
Mm.
they've heard somebody speak. And I'm like, but you don't need to do that. I think I have my wall. I've got my wall. You don't need to be empowered when you already have the power.
Mm,
And for me, you already have the power. What you haven't learned to do is how to unleash it or how to
yes.
harness it. So we already have it. What we don't have sometimes have is the skills or the confidence to actually put it into good use.
Really well said, because I completely agree. And that's why I put power. Power is the first word in my business name, because it's not the external power we seek. It's
Yeah,
the
no,
internal power we already have within us.
exactly.
And how do we tap into that? Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And we tap into it with knowing our strengths, our
Hmm.
values, our
Hmm.
passions,
Hmm.
and going for it and gaining that confidence and getting and trying to limit those obstacles in our way, because we have all these fears. There's
Being unapologetic.
yeah, I mean, there's money fears, there's
Yeah.
judgment fears, there's all those other fears. I don't know if
Yeah,
we've
so
talked about
many.
all the fears,
No,
but
there's so many fears. The
yeah,
age, am I too old? Am I giving it up? What if
yeah,
I fail?
yeah.
All of those things can happen. All of those things can happen. But how are you feeling right now? Are you feeling any better? No, you're miserable doing what you're doing. So why not give it a try? Why not give it a try? You're already miserable as it is. It can't get any worse.
Yeah. That's so true. Like I always like, there's always, you look at it, what's the worst that can happen and what's the best that can
Yeah,
happen? Because
yeah,
there's just two ways it can go, right?
absolutely.
So fantastic. I just get so energized talking to you. So it's like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. Fantastic. So, Janice, so tell us a little bit about you mentioned you had a podcast and your any other
Yes.
initiatives that I'm sure our audience would love to
Yeah.
learn a little bit more about that.
The podcast is This Woman Can, and very similar, Kavita. I speak to Black women about their career journeys, and I share. So I share every other week. I do an interview, but then one week I'll pick a particular topic, and I'll expand on that. I think this week I was talking about having the clarity, using your vacation to gain clarity for your career. Because we go along, but you can actually do some stuff and things like that. So I pick on different topics. I have my LinkedIn lives once a month. This Woman Can lives now that I've rebranded them a little bit. That really is an opportunity to have interaction with different panelists on different topics. We've touched on microaggressions. We've talked about how to be recruitable when you're over 50. We've talked about what it's like to be over 50. We've talked about so many things. But on LinkedIn, all the replays are there. All the replays are there.
Okay.
It's also my YouTube channel. This Woman Can is the YouTube channel, so I have the video interviews. My website, however, is janicesutherland.com.
That's great. As it should be.
Yeah, just my name. So I work with women one-on-one. I actually adore working one-on-one. That's my favorite.
So do I.
I do have a group program. It's the Reinvention Blueprint for Women of Color, which I run a couple of times a year. And I have a new one coming up. Not sure when this comes out, but it's coming out in September. The next cohort starts September. But there's always a regular couple of cohorts a year that I work with women as a group. Again, supposed to dispel the fact when women go, I can't afford a coach. So I'm like, okay, you can't afford me one-on-one, but here's an opportunity to network and also get the expertise, because yourself as a coach, you're always over delivering. You're always giving more because you can see the need is there sometimes.
Yeah.
So but my one-on-one is where I really enjoy working one-on-one. And I suppose I'm fortunate to be in a position where I don't have to have thousands of clients. I work with a select number of clients that enables me, one, to still live the life that I want to live, because it's what I created to do. And also I can serve them to the best of my ability.
Fantastic. Yes. I agree with all that. That's exactly how I love the working one-on-one, and the group coaching is great too, but it does allow people to have a kind of a cohort and be able to share lived experiences, like you said.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So we'll have all the links in our show notes for sure. And so I don't know, before we end off, maybe you want to just give a final thought to women that are listening as to what should they do at this juncture in their life and to really go for it in their next stage.
I've just looked up on my wall, just looked in front of me, and I've got a big post that says make life extraordinary. And that's what you need to do. What is it you need to do to make your life extraordinary? And, or the one thing I'd probably say as well is success. Measure success on your terms. What does success mean to you right now? What does it look like? And that's your measure, not anybody else's. It could be the fact I just want to be able to work less hours. I want to do something different in my career. That's your success measure, not anybody else's. And I think so those two, make life extraordinary and measure success on your own terms.
Beautiful. Beautiful. From your mouth to God's ears. Thank you so much, Janice.
Thanks,
it was a pleasure. Take care. I'm sure this interview with Janice left you inspired and invigorated for your next steps. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, ask yourself what you really want, not what society says you should have. That may have been okay in our 20s or 30s, but now it's okay if you actually want something different. Number 2, have a MacGyver mentality, that there is always a solution. You may have to take a couple of detours, but focus on what your end goal is. Number 3, sort out fact from fiction. And if this is what you really want to do, be focused on it. You will always have your detractors, but similarly, you'll have people who support you on your side. Number 4, values evolve and change. When it comes to purpose, ask yourself, does this make me feel good? Does it make me feel happy? Number 5, I always say I never want any could've, would'ves, or should'ves. Always try something, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, but at least you've tried. Number 6, this is the power trifecta. Black, female, over 50. You're getting me at my best. Number 7, you are not starting over, you're starting from experience. There is so much we have right now that we can tap into now that we didn't have in our 20s or 30s. 8, you don't need to be empowered when you already have the power. And 9, make life extraordinary and measure success on your own terms. Thank you for listening, and remember, everything is in place for life to unfold in its natural way. Be aware of this. If you need help figuring it out or taking the next tentative or bold step, I'm here for you. Reach out to me, my friend, because we are in this together. Until next time, stay well and stay safe.